What is up, and welcome to a brand new podcast. Welcome back to the latest channel, and welcome to something new. Now, for those that know me, I do have another podcast that I run with a couple of guys called the Chips or Crisp podcast, but of recent we haven't been able to record, so I thought, whilst things haven't been going on much, I do my own little thing, and when that's not going on, I'll talk about stuff on my own. Now, firstly, what is this podcast going to be about? Often it's going to be about sports, but it's also going to be about world topics and what's going on globally. Today, I've got two topics of conversation that I want to talk about. Target to make this around 20 to 30 minutes, because I don't want to make it like a full-blown 2-hour thing, because I just don't think there's enough to fit in it to make it interesting. So like 20 to 30 minutes, fairly short and fairly snappy, but hopefully interesting for you guys at the same time. Now, I've got two topics today, as I said a second ago. The first one is going to be universities. Now, Cambridge's decision, I've got notes down below, just a quick note, is Cambridge's decision to cut almost likely lectures until summer 2021. The impacts that that could have for myself as an A-level student finishing year 13, and on other people around, what it could cause for deferring and that sort of stuff. And then the other issue is the second coronavirus thing, but that's all that seems to be going on. In terms of news for the moment, that is going to be the Project Restart. Football is close to my heart, so I have to talk about it. So that's what's going to be going on in today's podcast. Let's get right into it. And one more thing, if you want to join me on this thing, I'd love to have anyone, all range of people, even if you're not like into the sports thing, and you want to talk about something different, say global events like the coronavirus stuff, or anything whatsoever. If you want to talk to me and do something like this, I'm happy to do so in the future. I may do this like a once a week thing, depending on how often Chips or Crisps go ahead. Probably coming out every Thursday if can go. But starting off with the first topic of the two, Cambridge University. Now, this is a very interesting topic. The news came in a couple of days ago. Now, this will be coming out hopefully on Monday. I should be getting another one out Thursday, double upload this week. But Cambridge University announced they are unlikely to be having any lectures until the summer of 2021. And that's 12 months away, which, to start off with, just seems very, very extreme as an action for them to be taking when the virus, A, is improving in the situation that we're having. Cases are dropping in the UK, at least on a daily basis, and it's dropping across Europe. Italy's under the 1,000 cases a day. Spain, I believe, is below 1,000 cases a day. Germany's been good. France has been good. The main countries with conflict and issues at the moment, Russia, Brazil, and I believe Mexico aren't doing too strongly. They're the three countries that are having major issues. So to shut unis, or their uni at least, until summer 2021, suggesting that the whole first year, or students will miss a whole year of lectures, is, to be honest, quite an extreme measure. Now, obviously, Open University is a thing nowadays, having online stuff, but I'm not sure whether it's free or very cheap. It definitely doesn't weigh up to 9 grand that you pay for university, or 27 grand over the 3 years if you're doing a proper degree in that respect. Now, could it see a transition? Some people are saying, could it end unis? Unlikely. I can't see that happening. It's just a way of thing. It's been around for like 1,000 years now. Universities have been up and running for centuries, literally. So I can't see this virus bringing it all to an end. I mean, it went through, before I was reading an article, that it went through and they carried on teaching through World War II. Now, some state the argument that yes, a V2 bomb is a little bit different to a virus, which is transmitted, which is true, but at the same respect, I'm completely in agreement that they should not be opening probably this year. That's, I think, most 99% of people who agree that September is the earliest start date. But to be honest, by September we'd hope that the virus could at least on a major scale be shut out. And maybe what they could do is a number of solutions they've had. Maybe they could limit people to more of a campus-based thing, having certain areas of the city where they avoid. There's plenty of solutions to which they could come up with, surely, in the 3-month or even 15-month time span that Cambridge is shutting down. Now, this could have a number of impacts. Firstly, students deferring. Now, I've looked online, I haven't spoken to many people about it, but I've looked online and BBC was saying that 20% of students may defer a year from the Cambridge University, which could have a big impact not just on our year, funding for the uni, but also the following year, the current year 12s, who are trying to get in when the uni's already fairly full, could lead to a backlog of students as people slowly, continuously push on backwards, and could have an impact for the next 2 to 3 years, depending on how things go down with the virus and stuff. Do they extend classes, make them bigger? Maybe, but that could again have negative impact, obviously, where you're going to house these people in the future. But in the same respect, do unis want to shut? So, for example, Cambridge, and this is a statement that a lot of people make, Cambridge can afford to shut for a year. But can the smaller unis? The answer is probably no. So where do they go from here? Do they have to follow suit? No, they don't. No legislation or law or any statement has been made stating that these other unis must shut until a future date. Currently they're shut at the moment due to lockdown procedures, but once lockdown is lifted there is no reason why they can't reopen at a similar time to schools. So obviously schools are targeted to reopen in September, with younger year groups, year R, year 1, maybe being opened even before and midway through the current term. So I see no reason why unis can't follow a similar policy. Now I know they're a lot bigger, but then businesses are large as well. Businesses have to run. I think unis have to run in the same respect, and it's a very strange risk for them to be taking. I don't think it's the right call. I think it's a very premature call to predicting what's going to happen with your uni or whoever's leading the decision 15 months in advance, when the fact that 3 months ago this virus wasn't in the UK. That seems like quite a jump to me. Look, the amount of things that could change in a short-term range, in my eyes at least, it's just too extreme of a jump to be making. Now, what do the other unis do? Now, Oxford, probably a leading decision maker on this. Your other major ones, your Oxford, your St Andrews, your Durhams, they're going to have a major impact. If they stay open, that will lead a precedent that Cambridge is the odd one out, and could in fact reverse their decision if things come to it. I doubt they will, but it's possible. Now, what those unis do, it will definitely affect students globally, and also the universities themselves and what they do in their decision. Now, considering the numbers, we currently have around 2,500 cases coming into the UK every day that are discovered. Now, obviously there's going to be a large number of that, but considering that 2 weeks prior to this, or 3 weeks probably prior to when this comes out, 6,000 cases was the number that we were looking at. It seems like things are cooling off. The summer was expected to be the period at which this thing came to at least a temporary close or a slowdown. And that, to be honest, so far has happened. We're in May now, which, to be honest, is what the scientists said would happen. Like, I know it seemed like a long time, 2 to 3 months now we've had lockdown, but in the same respect, scientists said the virus would peak in the UK around Easter. It did peak in Easter. They said it would begin to drop off. After that, it has dropped off. After that, they said it would begin to ease in the summer and restrictions could begin to be lifted in the summer. It appears that that again could happen. Now, I'm not going to go into what Boris has said in all of that stuff. I'm not a politics student, so I won't range into there, but I find it a very interesting decision as to what they could do. And this is going to have impacts both socially and educationally, because firstly, educating by Zoom, although it's a solution and it's a good solution and something they couldn't have had 20 years ago, it's not really what you want to see. And especially for subjects such as a science, where you've got all this practical experimenting and stuff. Now, I'm not a scientist either, so I'm kind of fluctuating a little, but also missing out on that teacher-student or lecturer-student impacts that you're having in having those one-to-one conversations that you sometimes need. It's a little bit harder to have online in the same respect as you could have it in a face-to-face impact, which I think is a big downside to this education thing. Now, obviously, the same number of people, I believe, should get degrees in the same level, so that in that respect is fair. Similar to A-levels, where although some people are saying for the current year 12s will grade bound to be lowered, not necessarily, but probably, because it all comes down to competition. So 75% of students may get a C. That will put them into that bracket to get a C, and the cutoff will be at that grade, not saying if only 5% of students get the certain grade that was set before for a C. They'll have preliminary ideas, but then they'll adjust to allow the same range of students, or the same number of students each year, or the same percentage, to have the grades each time around. Now, the other impact is socially. Uni is supposed to be a very social thing, and to cut that out of it seems like a big cost, and a lot of people have brought that up as an issue. I think it's something that has to be considered, is that I think it will be something that will take a big effect in people deferring, but the issue is the options now available is go to uni, which you can't especially do in the same way, take a gap year, which you can't really do because travel's off, or go for a job, an apprenticeship, which there aren't a whole lot available because you're cramming double the number of people into a space that couldn't fit in the first place, especially with some companies probably shutting down in the future. This is going to create a backlog of people all trying to get into jobs, make possibly the job market more effective, but again, I don't have huge experience in there, so I won't go too deeply into that. But yeah, definitely Cambridge's decision seems, in my opinion at least, very premature, way too soon coming in, and could create issues for themselves and students down the line. I mean, results haven't even come out yet, so it seems a very early decision, and also there's no way in telling what the situation will be in September come what's going on. Now, the second topic that we have got is going to be Project Restart. Football is very close to my heart. Now, we're going to kick off with the original target date of returning to football, and that is June 12th. Now, I think most people are agreed that that probably will not happen. But that begs the question, what do we do with the season from here? Now, yes, many players are back to training, but cases are not gone from the UK. You look at it, I believe there were 6 Premier League cases brought up when tested. Mariappa, a Watford player, was one of 3 Watford players to actually get pulled up with the virus. Obviously, he would be doing all of the self-distancing and quarantining needed in this situation. But one man that's been leading the charge against it, in fact, has been Troy Deeney. And I've got to say, it's difficult. I agree with him and I disagree with him. I agree with him in the respect that now is not the time and that the country isn't ready yet as much as it needs football. But in the same respect, I disagree in the respect that he seems quite timid, and I believe he could be someone that will want to hold off longer. But I fully respect if he wants to have a personal decision to say, I want to leave it longer because of the health issues of his child, which is a perfectly valid reason. Or even if you don't have a young child and you just feel that you want to protect people more, that's well within your rights. But I think at some point this thing has to restart. In my eyes, probably if I were to look at a date now, obviously we have to go on this week-to-week basis. Firstly, players saying they need 4 to 5 weeks to train up, which is fair enough. That makes things difficult. But assuming they're starting training now, that will give us 4 weeks from now, which is around mid-late May, that you could start the season. No, sorry, mid-late June, that you could start the season as our earliest start. So probably the earliest we could see it return is going to be July. But that again, it's possible. It's possible. 6 weeks from now. I mean, you can consider 6 weeks ago we were in the peak of the virus. We've now got a quarter of the cases coming in daily, probably a third actually, sorry. So a big drop in cases coming in. If we third it or quarter it again down to 500, 600 new cases a day, and say 200, 300, no, less than that, sorry. Are we having 2,000 deaths? No, we're having 200 deaths a day at the moment, so around 50 to 100 deaths a day. Would that be enough to reopen the Premier League without fans? I'd say yes, actually. That's similar to what Germany have at the moment in their statistics. They have reopened games, so maybe July could be the target date to kick off with, if not August. But that then begs the question, what happens with the season? Now, Euro 2021, unless things go very badly with the virus, will hopefully be going ahead next summer in mid-June. And that means that the Premier League next season has to start fairly quickly to get things going down the line. Now, there are a couple of options as to what they could do with this. Firstly, they could wait the new Premier League season that would have started on August 8th until maybe mid-September, cut out the winter break, starting off there based off the fact that players have had a long break already. However, playing then consistently, they'd be playing consistently through August through to late July would make it very intense for players, so they're having almost a full year of games before they're getting a break, which would be very tough on them. Alternatively, a couple of options that they could do. Now, relegation and promotion is a big issue in the current coronavirus crisis for football clubs. I mean, Hearts have gone in, I believe, and had a legal case brought up due to their relegation, and I think it's the right thing to do. Yes and no. Yes, I understand their frustrations. Yes, I understand the financial issues. Is it the time to do it? Maybe not. Alternatively, what the Premier League could do is bring up a larger number of clubs. So maybe do what the SPFL actually does do. So they bring up a few extra clubs. Say they bring up 24, they bring up 4 clubs this season from the Championship. No relegation this year, so it's fair on all teams. So especially Norwich will get very lucky in that situation. But and then coming to mind, this could be a solution that they run. Or even just keeping it at the 20 teams or having 22 teams. I believe Leeds and who's top of the Premier League Championship? I can't even spring to mind who's top of the Championship, but the top 2 teams are the only 2 promoted. We go up to a league of 22 teams. Then you'd have each team plays each other once, taking 21 games into the season. Then, like the Scottish Premier League, the league is then split in half from top half to bottom half. Each team then plays their separate half of the league, allowing for that near competitiveness of promotion and relegation to remain, but shortening the season to what would be 21 games in the main season, 10 games late season, 31 game season, which would give the league for the current season, right, for the next season, also linked to the European League, 7 games cut off of the season. Now it comes to mind. I'm speaking really quickly and running through this in my mind, so it's probably not going to make sense, but I'll put a graphic up to explain it's a little bit better. A 31 game season could be a little bit better than the 38, giving players more time to rest. Another thing they could do to help ease that over the next 12 months is remove the Carabao Cup, which, although obviously is a competition, there's paid sponsors to it, teams don't really take it seriously anyway, so maybe cutting it for this year could be an option that would give players more time for fitness and also allow for more midweek league fixtures coming up in the future. But then the question remains, what of other leagues that have done similar things? Now, the German Bundesliga has started. Should we be following their league, or should we be following the lead of the Eredivisie and Ligue 1 that have already stopped? That's a very, very difficult decision. I think one that probably